One of the most tragic and terribly treated wives of King Henry VIII was his fifth wife, Katherine Howard. Katherine was just a teenager when she was led towards a scaffold inside the walls of the Tower of London for her date with the executioner and the block. She had been accused of adultery and treason against her husband the king, and it was a terrifying fate for a woman of roughly 19 years old. She was a naive and carefree girl who should never have been queen, and should never have married the grotesque, large, and unpredictable 49-year-old Henry VIII. But there has been a number of shocking things discovered about Katherine Howard in the years since her death. She was not allowed any mercy at all for her execution, and following her head being taken clean off her shoulders, she was then subjected to a rough ordeal, and her remains were literally attempted to be dissolved and wiped off the face of the earth. These efforts, it's believed, were relatively successful, and her corpse and remains have never been found, despite intense searches for them. But why have Henry VIII's fifth wife's remains never been found? To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Katherine Howard married King Henry VIII on the 28th of July 1540 inside of Oatlands Palace, a matter of weeks following the annulment of King Henry VIII and his fourth wife's marriage. It was shocking, as Katherine was roughly 17 years old when she married the almost 50-year-old King Henry VIII, and she was the complete opposite of her husband. Henry was by all accounts a moody, unpredictable and very dour man, but Katherine was young, carefree and also careless, and she had previously been subjected to grooming by a man, her music teacher, when she was younger. There were also many rumours at court about her accepting previously the proposal of a man named Francis Derham, who later became her assistant at court. Presumably this position had been obtained by Derham by blackmail or deceit. But her downfall truly came as she became embroiled in an affair with the king's favoured courtier, Thomas Culpeper. Culpeper usurped the king in the affections of Queen Katherine Howard, and the pair began an affair, and they met up in private, many of these meetings presumably physical, and they would be orchestrated by Jane Boleyn. Culpeper and Katherine wrote love letters to each other, but the rumours gripped court, and Archbishop of Canterbury Thomas Cranmer investigated and found a love letter from the Queen to Culpeper, which was very damning, written in her own distinctive handwriting. There was without doubt no denying what was happening, and when Cranmer brought this news to the king, who was praying in the Chapel Royal of Hampton Court on the 1st of November 1541, the king then ordered Katherine's confinement and arrest. She was locked up inside her own walls of her chambers, and was even kept under close watch for her own safety, as there were concerns that she would bring harm upon herself. Cranmer, who interrogated the young queen, claimed that, "I found her in such lamentation and heaviness as I never saw no creature, so that it would have pitied any man's heart to have looked upon her." She was eventually sent to the Tower of London, after being stripped of her title of queen, and she even allegedly passed under the heads of Culpeper and Derham, the two men she was linked to, who had both been executed on Tower Hill earlier. A number of Katherine's family members were also locked up inside the Tower of London, accused of being involved in the scandal, but then an Act of Attainder was passed against Katherine, which sentenced her to death. No trial was held for her, and she was now at the mercy of the king, her husband, and she was locked up within her rooms in the Tower of London, awaiting her death. She was informed that her execution would take place on Monday the 13th of February 1542 at 7 a.m. in the morning. The night before, the young teenage Katherine had the executioner's block brought to her room, so that she could practice laying her head upon it. She did this routinely all night and did not sleep. The next morning, the fifth wife of Henry VIII made her way out onto the scaffold inside of the Tower of London, which was placed on the north side of the White Tower, the central and oldest part of the fortress. She passed under various gatehouses and moved very quickly. When she arrived at the scaffold, she was helped up, and she gave a short speech to many witnesses who had gathered, claiming that her punishment was worthy and just, and that she wanted mercy for her family. She begged the people to pray for her soul, and she protected her family by doing this. Katherine Howard, as she had practised many times, then laid her head upon the block, the same one which she had brought to her room the night before. She then quickly, after her speech had been done, signalled to the executioner that she was ready, sticking her arms out, and then the executioner's axe crashed down upon her thin and slender neck, and with one brutal blow from the sharp instrument, the head of Queen Katherine Howard was taken clean off. The scaffold she was executed on was simple, and hay had been thrown down to soak up her blood. There was no expensive black cloth, unlike Anne Boleyn's execution, the second wife of Henry VIII, and even the method, using the axe rather than the sword, was a show of the king's strength, no mercy, and his disapproval. Following Catherine's execution, the execution of Jane Boleyn, the woman who had arranged the Queen's illicit liaisons, then took place. She was beheaded whilst kneeling in the Queen's blood in exactly the same manner. But Catherine's body would then, after her execution, be wrapped in a white cloth, and she was not placed inside of a coffin or a box. Her remains in this shroud were carried into the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, the chapel within the Tower of London, and they were then unceremoniously dumped inside of a shallow grave, which had been dug in the chapel. Now the remains of Katherine Howard, despite intense searching during the Victorian period, have never been found, and they have never been located. There is inside of the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula a grave for Katherine Howard. This gravestone outlines her title, Queen Katherine Howard, and shows her coat of arms. But in reality this is not a grave marker, just a memorial stone, as no body is found under the marker. There are some sinister reasons why the body of Katherine Howard was never located and has never been found. Firstly, it's believed that following the execution, King Henry VIII, who had been greatly embarrassed by the scandal involving his fifth wife, then ordered Catherine's body to be covered in lime or quicklime following her death. The effect of this was that her body would have rotted and decomposed very quickly because of the addition of the lime, and this could have dissolved her remains within a matter of months. The point of this was for Henry VIII to literally wipe the remains of his fifth wife off the face of the earth, and to rid her from history and his memory, putting her down as a bad mistake with absolutely no trace found. If lime had been added to the grave, the remains of Katherine would have decomposed quicker than the other bodies that lay inside of the Tower of London's chapel. But there is another harrowing reason why Catherine's body may not have been found. As Katherine was, it's believed, roughly 19 years old when she was executed, it has been claimed that her bones had not fully hardened, and some historians believe that she may have been even younger than 19 when she lost her head, which is completely harrowing, especially considering the age of her husband, Henry VIII. Being this young, a teenager when she died, meant that her body was not at the age of complete adulthood, and the fact that her bones may not have fully hardened could have led to the decomposition much quicker. When we think of the bones of people from centuries ago who have been found, for example King Richard III, his remains were even identified through DNA because of the preservation they were in and because of the age of the deceased king. During the reign of Queen Victoria, there was a significant amount of restoration done inside the Tower of London's chapel, and the floor was lifted and the remains of many people who lost their heads were found. Queen Anne Boleyn's body was located and discovered, this allegedly being confirmed to have been Anne's, as the remains were of a woman with a slender neck of roughly the same age of Anne when she died. This corpse had also been beheaded cleanly by a sharp instrument. The archaeologists and scientists tried their best to find Katherine Howard's body, but nothing could be found. It was clear that with regards to her body and remains, that someone, most probably King Henry VIII, did not want her body to ever be discovered and found. The story of Queen Katherine Howard is a harrowing and tragic one, and she is today considered very much a victim of King Henry VIII, her tyrannical husband, who would ruthlessly order her execution, casting her aside with absolutely no remorse, mercy or care. He was made a cuckold by Katherine Howard's lover, Culpeper, and the shame this brought to the king scarred him for the rest of his life. But was this shame what led to the king ordering the remains of his fifth wife to be literally dissolved off the face of the earth? It is very much possible. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.